He never had a chance, and I was so surprised to see him sign on with the devil. But when you talk about apology, I think the one that you should really be apologizing for, and the thing that you should be apologizing for, are the 33,000 emails that you deleted and that you acid washed. And then the 2 boxes of emails and other things last week that were taken from an office and are now missing. And I'll tell you what, I didn't think I'd say this, but I'm going to say it. And I hate to say it. But if I win, I am going to instruct my Attorney General to get a special prosecutor to look into your situation, because there has never been so many lies, so much deception. There has never been anything like it. And we're going to have a special prosecutor. When I speak, I go out and speak. The people of this country are furious. In my opinion, the people that have been long-term workers at the FBI are furious. There has never been anything like this where emails and you get a subpoena, and after getting the subpoena, you delete 33,000 emails. And then you acid wash them, or bleach them, as you would say, a very expensive process. So we're going to get a special prosecutor, and we're going to look into it, because you know what? People have been, their lives have been destroyed for doing 1/5 of what you've done, and it's a disgrace. And honestly, you ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Secretary Clinton, I want to follow up on that. I'm going to let you talk about emails.
Because everything he just said is absolutely false, but I'm not surprised.
Really?
In the first debate,
and the audience needs to calm down here.
I told people that it would be impossible to be fact-checking Donald all the time. I'd never get to talk about anything I want to do and how we're going to really make lives better for people. So, once again, go to HillaryClinton.com. We have literally Trump. You can fact check him in real time. Last time at the first debate, we had millions of people fact checking. So I expect we'll have millions more fact checking because, you know, it's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Yeah, because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
We want to remind the audience to please not talk out loud. Please do not applaud. You're just wasting time.
And Secretary Clinton, I do want to follow up on emails. You've said your handling of your emails was a mistake. You disagreed with Director.
I've just received a call from Secretary Clinton. She congratulated us. It's about us. On our victory, and I congratulated her and her family on a very, very hard-fought campaign. I mean, she fought very hard. Hillary has worked very long and very hard over a long period of time, and we owe her a major debt of gratitude for her service to our country. I mean that very sincerely.
Some people have said that participating in elections is like a vote between Satan and Lucifer. And at no point in history was this made more apparent than the 2016 presidential election. Throughout the election, we saw both the mainstream and alternative media going out of their way to build up Hillary and Trump to be these exact archetypes. Not only was Hillary propped up as the biggest crook this country has ever seen with the WikiLeaks email fiasco, but they threw in accusations of her engaging in this occult activity known as spirit cooking, just to set off the Christian folk. With Trump, however, the issue isn't exactly so cut and dry. The so-called alternative media, Christian and non-Christian alike, propped him up as more of the Lucifer archetype, the bright morning star who was going to come in and save the day and do such wonderful things. It was easy to get people to fall head over heels for the guy because to a lot of people, he said all the right things. He told people what they have always wanted to hear, and he was promoted as if he was anti-establishment to boot. This narrative was bolstered by the mainstream media's apparent antagonistic behavior towards Donald Trump. Now, this video is not a blow-by-blow demonstration showing that Donald Trump is about as much an establishment turd as they come, because there have already been plenty of videos showing this to be the case. I am sure many of you have already seen them from YouTubers such as The Vigilant Christian. The obvious intention was to get people trusting the government again, back into the false left-right paradigm. Now you have many in the so-called truth movement who over the years have made tons of videos about how rigged and controlled the government is by the powers that be, suddenly change their tune, becoming some of the biggest cheerleaders for the establishment. And now you have Christians so ecstatic of Trump being the president that they have claimed that he was especially appointed by God himself. Some have even claimed that the nation is going through a revival. They bring up bits of scripture such as from Romans chapter 13 and Daniel chapter 2 about God's sovereignty over the affairs of his creation, taking these verses totally out of context to mean that throughout history, God has appointed and removed every single governing authority that has ever existed, which is not really what it says at all. And these are some of the reasons why I knew that Donald Trump was going to win. It was a foregone conclusion because last year's election was the greatest example of the devil playing both sides that I have ever seen. It's not that easy sometimes to see his game because Satan hides behind a multitude of guises very well. And this is illustrated by the eagle on the $1 bill. You see, the eagle is holding an olive branch and a bundle of arrows, symbolizing war and peace. And usually, behind every president, you'll see the arrows showing on the flag draped behind them. And for those in the know, this tells them that his job is to wage war, as has been the case with every president in recent memory, whether it be covert or otherwise. The head of the eagle symbolizes the head of states, and the two wings are symbols of the false left-right paradigm, the two-party system. But you see the body is covered by a shield, so that you can't see what comprises it, what it's made of. The real power is hidden, and in the Bible it is made very clear that the real power behind all nations is the devil. Which brings me to this next video clip.
Boil, bubble, bubble, I smell trouble. Witches across the country were gathering at the stroke of midnight to put a hex on President Trump. Did you see this?
That's why I couldn't sleep.
Find Donald J. Trump. Find their wickedness. Find their wickedness.
This is real. Scenes like this playing out as a collective spell was cast under the crescent moon. The witches plan to do the same for each upcoming crescent moon until President Trump is out of office.
Now this is the main reason why I wanted to make this video, because it is a shining example of how ridiculous the propaganda has gotten, with the media going out of their way to make Trump out to be some kind of persecuted saint in the eyes of his supporters. But what first needs to be addressed are the often used verses from Romans 13 and Daniel chapter 2 concerning the natural order of governments, God and Satan, because it seems to me that there are far too many Christians who put more of their trust in man's system of government than in the Lord, where it belongs. Is God ultimately in control over the affairs of his creation? Of course, Scripture makes that quite obvious. He cannot claim to be sovereign over his creation if it doesn't include his government. However, in addressing Romans 13 and Daniel chapter 2, you are all missing a few key pieces of scripture in the New Testament. Starting with Revelation, we see it made very clear that God would not be the one ruling the nations with a rod of iron until his second coming. Also made very clear in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 24 and 25. We also see in Revelation that God gave Satan dominion over all of the kingdoms of the earth, symbolized by the seven-headed ten-horned dragon. We know this to be true when he took Jesus up on a high mountain and offered him all of the kingdoms of the earth if he bowed down and worshipped him. Satan is not a moron. He wouldn't be offering to hand over control over something that he never owned in the first place, because Satan is the god of this world, as it states in 2 Corinthians. And this illustrates how ridiculous that news clip really is, because the media would like us Christians to believe that you can cast out Satan using his devices. If Trump is in office, it's because Satan wants him there. Because as of right now, Satan is the one ruling the nations with a rod of iron, as God permits. A kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. And if some witch by Beelzebub can cast out Beelzebub, then how can his dominion over the kingdom stand? This is the point I wanted to make concerning this, that I didn't see addressed in any other video. Your presidents are groomed and selected long before you even hear their names come election time. If Satan thought that your vote actually counted for something, if he thought that your vote would usurp his dominion over the kingdoms in some way, you would have never been given the right to vote in the first place. And I look across the broad spectrum of the self-proclaimed alternative truth movement, and I see the amount of research that has been done on the powers behind the throne, and you all come to different conclusions as to who is ultimately in control. Whether it be Freemasons, the Vatican or Jesuits, the Zionists, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, the Committee of 300, the Bilderberg Group, the Rothschilds and Rockefeller Foundations, and the Trilateral Commission, among other groups, of which I have briefly discussed in previous videos. And I'm not surprised that this is in fact the case, because I have found that the further up the pyramid you go, the more ambiguous it becomes as to who is in control. The reason is simple. It's because the battle is not against flesh and blood. The battle is against spiritual wickedness in high places. It's against Satan, the prince of the power of the air, and the chief ruler over the darkness of this world. The ultimate control factor is a supernatural one. So for those Christians who believe that God put Donald Trump in office as if this is some kind of King Cyrus type of prophecy being fulfilled, just be aware that God also rose up King Nebuchadnezzar to punish Jerusalem for its sins. And if I am to assume that God specifically rose Donald Trump up to be in power, you can best believe that it's got nothing to do with some revival for a nation as wicked as America, as it openly embraces homosexuality. This is not Old Testament Israel we are living in. God doesn't work through kings and presidents to spread his word. The Great Commission to spread the gospel to every nation was not given to governments. It was given to us, his followers, his disciples, the church, not to Donald Trump or anybody in a position of power.